This is called God's Last Words, hashtag nothing very original. Nothing very original ever came after the phrase, according to studies. But anyway, they did this experiment someplace, at MIT I want to say, or maybe it was Johns Hopkins, where they recorded the last words of former radicals / revolutionaries spoken from their deathbeds. Topping this list, surprise, surprise, were words like fuck and God. And much lower down someplace, I believe it was Picasso who first said this, or maybe it was Keith Moon, was the phrase, get these goddamn nuns the fuck out of my sight for Christ's sake. Thereby demonstrating the latter term, God, at least conceptually speaking, wins out over the former term, fuck, if only by a hair, and only really metonymically at that when you think about it. Now, I haven't been around the dying enough personally to confirm the frequency of these terms used, but I do sort of like to imagine all these people sort of unabashed, unadulterated, living for themselves in that moment, even if they haven't exactly contributed anything new to the Census Bureau. But what do I mean when I say living for themselves? I guess what I mean is, how often are we warned about the secret consequences, the great and terrible unforeseen of what we say and do? Some butterfly flutters its wings on a beach in Brazil, and another tornado brews up someplace in Tokyo. Some teenage girl announces her plans for the weekend on her Facebook page, and some defenseless kitten is mauled someplace by a pack of angry warhogs, right here off Van Ness Boulevard. According to a certain scholar, a certain Dr. Amethyst Leaches You, God bless you, Gesundheit, PhD, or maybe it was the author Edgar Carrot who pointed this out. Anyway, according to whomever, really, the scientists who coined, the butterfly effect, they deliberately offered the example of a butterfly causing a tornado rather than, say, something more pleasant, like much-needed rain, or like a popsicle epidemic, or like, 50 consecutive literary magazines with record-breaking attendance in the Bay Area. Research bears this out, of course. See, they say they chose this example, and there's really no way to avoid this now. Quote, according to studies, something detrimental is statistically 10,000 times more likely to occur in the world than just about anything else, unquote. So you see, all of this explains, for instance, why I'm so afraid to talk to that cute little bartender, at the Sugar Lounge with the sunken eyes and the sheer you'll never have meness plastered all over her face. Because you see, I don't want to mess up whatever great things she's got going on Thursday a year from now. Sorry, that should have been a year from not now, which actually more accurately reflects what she would have said to me in real life. So you see, all this also explains why I never say anything, for example, when that tall black homeless man with headphones who lives in my neighborhood and never remembers my name, even though he asks me for money every day, and is forever singing out the lyrics. No, make that shouting out the lyrics to Keith Sweat's Can We Make Love? Even right there in the middle of the checkout line at Walgreens, which I admit I did follow him into one day just to, get the full range of his emotions. So anyway, backing up to this study, what do they mean when they say the word radical, or that perhaps there is a paradise someplace that may have been abandoned but has not yet been destroyed? I think what they mean is that, what if every time a young kid swears, he says, fuck your uncle, for instance, or he just says, your mother's a goddamn astronaut, like we used to do, practically begging in that case for divine retribution. What if every time this happens, some other paradise is lost, or some hopo, or hoopoe, or some bat or angel loses its wings? I mean, what if God does exist after all, but only on a technicality, sort of, because, when she made Earth, she was still sort of in her teenage years, not quite over the whole dinosaur stage yet, and she still hadn't quite learned about responsibility, or how to speak to adults exactly during awkward barroom, late-night encounters turned one-night stands, potentially, I should say. I mean, on the other hand, what if God was just a little high the day when he told Adam, he said, sit tight, man, BRB. Oh yeah, and by the way, remember, don't touch my shit or else. And so when God came back and she saw that Adam and Eve did exactly that, because really, who would take a God like that seriously? Let's say that she decided to punish them on a whim for the whole of eternity, just having them multiply and procreate, and not necessarily in that order, just so that she could just drown them a handful of times and then leave them alone forever, which are maybe the two biggest mistakes that you can make as a parent, if you ask anybody. It's practically parenting 101. And maybe she did all this so that from that point forward, you see, the rest of the world would be divided, so that half of those on Earth would always have these, abandonment issues, more or less delusionally clinging to the hope that she might return one day, while the other half would more or less conveniently forget all about her, at least until the hour of their deaths, when they would find themselves blurting out exactly the same thing that God must have said after she came down to check up on, the other gods' experiment, because their relationship by then was like he would turn a light out in the house or the garden and she would just come and turn it out again, So maybe God number 2 was even in a bad mood. Let's say God number 1 was out playing some video game someplace. We have to remember it was his teenage years, and he was playing with Mammon or with Lucifer or with the wise men with that potent frankincense and myrrh, the sticky icky kind that always sets him on edge a little, but he doesn't quite know how to turn down. And so then she came down and saw what had happened in this little garden, the little experiment, the study. And she said something, She said something that was part drugged, maybe part revelation. She said what any god would say. She said something confused and warbled and guttural, like, what the fuck? Because what else would she say? Because she wasn't thinking. It's just what came out. Thank you.